Hi, my name is Eric Allen Rapp. I am a partner in the FoodTech investment team of Vaekstfonden, the sovereign Danish investment fund. I'm not here to talk about Vaekstfonden today or the Green Future Fund. I'm here to talk about some issues that have close to my heart, and I've invited some people to join me in this discussion. This is how this is going to go for the next 45 minutes. I will introduce my guests here. I will say a few words just to frame the discussion. I will ask each of one of my guests to present themselves and why they're here for about 7 minutes, and then we'll have a talk. My guests are, in order from this side to this side. This side is digital because Hampus is joining us from Malmö. He is a general partner and founder of Pale Blue Dot. As far as I'm aware, the only seed stage climate-focused investor in the Nordic region. He'll be joining us. Hi, Hampus. We have Petra. Hey. We have Petra, who is a co-founder of Grim, which is a sustainable company that is taking leftover fruits and vegetables and making that available for people to reduce waste in the world. We have Simon, who is the CEO of a startup company called Commoditrader, who has a pretty ambitious carbon initiative in what they're doing. And then we have Lars, who is the CEO and one of the founders in the family of a company called Neutral, which is doing, in my view, one of the most sustainable apparels on the planet. So these are the people that we have here, and I'll start by just framing this discussion. I start most conversations when I'm talking either with people or to crowds to talk about the big picture. And I have a mantra almost where I talk about climate, and I'll use that just to frame things in the first place. Nothing that people watching this probably don't know, but we have a planet that is heating up. We have a planet that is going to be growing in average temperature over the next years. If we exceed 2% average temperature rise on the planet, we have changing land masses. We have Arctic ice that is melting. We have huge changes in the climate of the planet. We have a population that is growing. Will be 10 billion people in 30 years, most of them living in big cities. We have a lack of biodiversity that's due in part to climate and in part to unsustainable farming practices. So, and as because of that, we have actually lost a huge chunk of our farmable land on the planet over the last 30 or 40 years. So we have a pretty big dilemma here, which is that the planet is getting hotter, the population is growing, the amount of food that we're actually able to produce has gone down because of the arable land. We need to produce 60% more food to feed the population. So we have a bunch of challenges. Now, I mentioned this to frame the discussion because I actually don't want to talk about that. What I want to talk about is that these issues are so big that, as individuals, you can watch a hurricane on the television, but it's hard to relate as individuals and as companies to these issues because they're so big, they're planetary, and we have existential challenges here. So it's quite a big thing that I want to bring up. And I've invited some people here that have a very important shared set of values that we'll have a discussion about. Just to mention a few more things here, what's interesting about this group of people is that Petra is one of 2 female co-founders of this company. Simon is the CEO of a company that's founded by 2 women. Lars is the CEO of a company founded by him and his family, 2 women and 2 men. Hampus is very much into gender diversity. There's a very tight correlation between values and diversity. And I think this is an important thing just to mention here, and this is why I'm very excited to have this crowd here. On these notes, what I'll do is start with Hampus. Hampus, 7 minutes, just describe what you're doing and why you're here, and then we'll move on to the others. Shoot.
As I'm on the digital forum, I'm actually going to try to be less than 7 minutes because it might be less interesting to listen to a person on video. But I do exist in real life. I'm not just a video. No, but so we are a climate seed stage fund. We invest in companies that we think that are making a better world within climate, and that for it needs to address one of the bigger problems. There are a lot of companies that are on the margins good for climate, but it needs to be a company that's working with one of the bigger issues. At the same time, it needs to be a company that is venture backable company, which means it needs to be able to address things at scale. It needs to be kind of making money and sort of have that ambition. And I think that goes very hand in hand nowadays. I think there's been a long era of companies saying that we're going to do good for the world, and every single investor looking at them and saying, oh, that's nice. How do you make money? And I think that it's very clear for most people today that those things can go hand in hand. There are naturally companies that do good but are hard to make money on, and there are naturally a lot of companies, as we know, that make a lot of money and do no good at all. And I think that what we're seeing is the intersection between the two is getting bigger and bigger. And as the previous speaker talked about, I mean, this is becoming more and more of a given, that it's not going to be a surprising thing that companies do good. It's hopefully it's going to be a surprising thing that companies don't do good. So yeah, that's sort of the brief thing about us. We invest across Europe, sometimes in the US, but preferably in Europe, because we see Europe has actually a massive advantage on this. We see the Nordics are super advanced. We see Germany and the UK and Netherlands are being super advanced. And we're seeing a lot of these amazing companies created by, as you said, a more diverse group of founders, but we wish it was way more diverse. It feels still that most of the capital still go to a rather small group of people. So that's about us.
Hampus, thank you. I think this is really important and relevant what you're saying here. It goes back to something that we discussed in a panel yesterday, and that's that personally for me, aside from doing good and doing good business, I have a very strong investment thesis, which is that companies in this space should be able to create great businesses doing these good things. In fact, I think that companies that are working within this space will be able to outperform many other companies in the market because of the fact that they're working in an area that is becoming so important for all of us. On that note then, Petra.
Yes, so my name is Petra. I am the CEO and co-founder of EatCrim. And EatCrim is a platform for ugly and surplus fruits and vegetables. So what that means is that we get all this produce that the farmers normally can sell because of the way the fruits and vegetables look, and we sell it to customers, to the market in different ways. We have a food box subscription where we sell these vegetables packed in a box and delivered right to people's doorstep or to a pickup point. And then we also tackled the food business, so the B2B market, by selling there as a wholesaler. And I think the kind of story how we started is really important in understanding how we tackle these cream problems and how can we actually create an impact. Me and Caroline, the other co-founder, we met when we were studying together back at Copenhagen Business School. And we really wanted to, well, we studied entrepreneurship and innovation. So we had, of course, that entrepreneurial kind of link to it. But then we were really interested about food as a way to tackle climate. We thought that it is something that touches everybody's lives. Everybody has an opinion about it, and everybody knows something about it. At some point, I was kind of regretting that I didn't take a science degree, because I thought that is the way that we can actually change anything. But now I'm quite happy that I didn't, and I can tell why. So basically, in one of the courses, then we wanted to study food waste. And we really wanted to understand why does food waste happen and where, and what are the power structures that cause it. And one day we went to visit some farms in Sjælland here in Denmark, and I was standing next to this pile of carrots and pile of cabbages, and I was looking at it and I was asking the farmer, why is it standing here? And she was explaining to me that it's simply because it's too big, and look, these carrots are too small and these cabbages have some bad leaves on top, so we can't sell them. And we went home, we took some of that home as well, and we were thinking, well, if we can eat this, why can't the rest of the people? And this is the beauty of being without education in science or food systems, without having the experience in it, just thinking, this doesn't make sense to me as a normal consumer. And then we started to think, how can we actually bring the produce to the market? And we really had to focus on solving it on the ground level, so really like at the start of the supply chain with the farmers. But at the same time, us too being also very, let's say, consumers who want to consume more sustainably. We're not like super hardcore about it at that point, but we wanted to change our behaviors. So at the same time, it was really important to create something that the customers want to buy. So actually, our approach was always to tackle both sides of it, to supply and demand. So that's how we started. Wrote a nice presentation about it and all that for school, but then actually understood that there is a business model behind this. And so we started to, like I said, really focus on the farms. We called a lot of them. We actually found also a lot of research, but also with our own experience, we confirmed that there is supply that needs to be sold, and at the same time, we were getting customers. In 2018, in July, we started then delivering these food boxes. We chose this format because we thought it's so easy. If we bring it to your doorstep with the recipes, the instructions, even that if the box tells you where to put these items in your home, like we make it so easy for the consumer that there is not really excuse not to buy it and not to change your consumption habits. So that was sort of the approach. Moving forward, now 2 years and 2 months since we started, we've also shown that that business model works. So we have built a network of suppliers, both in Denmark and internationally. Now they reach out to us. Now we're getting calls from Italian and Spanish and Danish farmers saying that, can you please buy my apples because they're too small for the other buyers? And at the same time, we've also grown our customer base in Denmark at a great rate and are now looking also to go to the next country, to Sweden. And all this, we also believe that there is something like, when you called me and asked for examples of kind of the topic of discussion is kind of like, okay, what is green and what does it have to do with me? I think with our boxes, we actually want to tell to all the customers that it is about you, but it's also something that everybody with their small changes to the behaviors can actually change. So all in all, like I said, like the whole purpose behind it is not just to have a product or just to build a supplier side platform, but actually combine those two together. I think we can get maybe to the rest of it later on when I'll leave the stage to the next ones.
Just to comment here first, Simon, this is really very interesting and always very inspiring to hear you talk about this, Petra. I've been part of the strategy team in Vaekstfonden that's been working on the strategy for the Green Future Fund. And one of the data points that come up, which is quite telling, is that one of the biggest areas that we can do on the planet to impact climate change is to reduce food waste. We waste 1.3 billion tons of food every year. That's enough that if we could eliminate it, we could feed the planet in 30 years. It's a critical issue, both directly and indirectly, and I think it's very inspiring.
Yeah. We calculated that if we were to save all this food waste with our boxes, we would have to deliver, or we could be delivering 188 million boxes per week. So I think we're talking about Germany and UK and Italy together. So in that sense, we could feed a lot of mouths with these boxes.
Great. Simon.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks for inviting. So I'm the CEO of Commoditrader, and together with a fantastic team, we have the mission to enable a sustainable farming ecosystem. And when we talk about sustainability, we basically talk about economic and climate sustainability and making it go hand in hand. Unfortunately, investors like Eric Anna tells me it takes at least 2 hours to understand what we're doing, and therefore I'll talk less about what we are actually doing and what ambition we are driving instead. So let me start with a rhetorical question. Are farmers a part of the problem or a part of the solution? I think that's really the starting point for where we're taking this. Because if you ask the average Dane at least, it's very clear which camp we're in. But actually, if you look a bit closer, and maybe even a bit more, then actually farmers sit with one of the most important keys. I would actually maybe see the best kept secret in the entire fight toward climate drawdown. But let's take a step back. If we look at farms across the world and soils across the world, that's basically, to use a metaphor, it's a humongous sponge. It's called soil carbon. It has the ability to suck a lot and store a lot of the atmospheric carbon that we have in excess in our environment today. The problem is that the way we practice farming today is unsustainable, and it doesn't materialize that potential at all. The solution is called conservation agriculture. And now I'm sensing that not all have the extended tractor certificate like me, so a little bit of background. Because if you think about trees, we all know trees are fantastic because, for once, they take a lot of atmospheric CO2 and convert it into carbon that is stored inside the tree and the roots. But if you drive around the countryside and look at grains, then exactly the same process happens. Photosynthesis in the buildup of biomass converts CO2 from the atmosphere, and crops actually put the vast majority of that carbon into the soil and into the roots. So every year, each hectare of all the farmland you look at actually takes a lot of CO2 out of the atmosphere and put it into the soil. The problem is that subsequently the farmer comes and tills the soil, and this is a very, very simplistic version. But then all the carbon that was just put in the soil is released again in gas form up in the atmosphere, and then we have a zero-sum game. But so the real question here is, how do we make not just 1, not 2, not 3, not 10, but but the vast majority of this world, and let's start in Denmark, Danish farmers transition into conservation agriculture. Because there's a few problems. One is that farmers run on a very thin margin. So the risk appetite to take on new investment in knowledge, because this is a completely different game, it's a different way of farming. The investment necessary in new machinery, the risks on yield is for good reasons. It's quite limited, and therefore nothing happens on its own. Therefore, there's a need for an incentive. So what we've been doing is really to look around, where is this moving? And we have to look west. Because what's really surprising, maybe even not surprising, but is really interesting, is that there's a whole tsunami running across the US now where farmers in scale are transitioning to conservation agriculture. And the igniter of that transition is in carbon certificates. So big platforms like Indigo, Farmers Business Network, Nori, and so on are creating incentives. And this is the short version of it, where they are measuring, quantifying, validating, and verifying when farmers are transitioning from traditional into conservation agriculture, and is able to measure exactly how much carbon each year is then stored in the soil. Then they create a trusted certificate, and I know that is going to spend well with the next speaker, a trusted certificate that companies then buy because they trust the certificate to offset their emissions. All on a voluntary scheme, because there are plenty of companies that has a real willingness to have a strategic ambition to be carbon neutral, but they're missing that credible certificate to do it. Therefore, we have put in place, and we'll launch that next week. We've been piloting building the technology along with big farmers in Denmark, in Romania, in Poland, to really get all the measurements, all the technology, all the data capture, and I can tell you there's a lot of data capture to be done in order to do this, in place to be able to do this certification and to get buyers in place to actually buy this from farmers. Because then we produce a structural incentive for farmers to transition into conservation agriculture. And just to give you some numbers, so a farmer that actually fully converts into conservation agriculture, compared to traditional practice, are actually net able to store every year for at least 20 years 5 tons of CO2 equivalent per hectare. If you just think about the potential in Denmark there are more than 2.5 million hectares of arable land. So the potential just in our small Denmark is enormous for mitigating and offsetting our carbon emissions. If you look at it from the level of the farmer, if he gets up to 5 certificates per hectare a year, and we believe that we can sell those certificates in a way that he gets paid out 15 euros per certificate. That's 75 euros. And compare that to contribution margin in existing farming of somewhere between 135 and 150 euros per hectare. That was a lot of numbers in short time. The point is that we can actually improve the contribution margin for farmers by transitioning with 50%. And that's a very, very, very strong incentive for farmers to transition at scale. And then lastly, therefore we set ourselves a really big, hairy, audacious goal, which is how can we, before 2030, ensure that compared to today, that we're able to sequestrate and store 25 megaton of CO2 in the soil in Denmark. We truly believe we can get there. We need somewhere between 40 and 50% of hectares in Denmark to get there, and we need to build an ecosystem around it, where it's not just about farmers, it's not just about a certification system like ours. It's actually really about getting the entire system from machine manufacturers to financiers to knowledge providers, because this is actually a real transition in place to support and incentivize a scaled mobilization of farmers. Because I believe that when we look 5 years ahead, then we think, to go back to my initial statement, then we start really thinking about farmers as our friend and one of the real drivers of true change and that can move the needle.
Agreed.
Thank you.
So again, in my world, very inspiring, finding a way to actually inspire farmers and to provide an economic incentive for farmers to help make a transition towards more sustainable agriculture. on a very, very large scale. I mean, what you mentioned was just in Denmark alone. Imagine if we could actually do this across multiple geographies. The impact is quite enormous.
Just to give a small number, in Denmark, the largest farm holding is 4,000 hectares. We are present in Romania as an example. There you have 50,000 hectares farms. So it really counts when we get that transition onto a completely different practice. And the potential in this is just beyond belief. And that's why I'm saying I think it's the best kept secret.
So one more comment on this, and that's that this is about carbon. But this is about more than carbon, because by converting to conservation agriculture, you're doing much more. You're promoting biodiversity. Most of the conventional farmland that we're actually using, a very large portion of it is actually dead earth, that is not alive. By doing this, you're keeping the earth alive, you're stopping erosion, you're increasing the arable land that we can actually use on the planet, and you're actually making these farms more resilient to adverse climate, which everyone is starting to face these days. So it's a very, very big issue, and it's a pretty audacious goal. Respect. Lars, Neutral.
Yes, hello. I'm Lars Bech. I'm the CEO of Neutral.com. We are a textile company. I'm going to tell you a little bit about textiles. I started out as a young man, just so you understand my story. 30 years plus ago, I went to Bangladesh. Textile industry had moved there from Europe, from East here, to Asia. And what I saw very fast that when I'm in t-shirts, I'm in hoodies, I'm in polos, I'm in bags, like that. So we were producing full power out there, and quickly it became millions of pieces. I'm not on B2C, I'm on the B2B market. So I supply to textile printers and gift companies who decorate it and delivers to the big corporates, right? So very fast I could see that I was there 4 times a year, like that. When I came, I could see they were working, too late early in the morning. They were tired. Workers' conditions were very low. When I, let's say we had an order for 100,000 t-shirts, which has to be a special green color, I had to go to the dyeing companies and tell them, hey, you gotta do it once again because it's not the right color. And when I was there, I followed the wastewater from these big tankers where you color in, and of course it ended in the rivers. So I went down to the rivers and I saw it with my own eyes, orange, black, navy, black, orange, pink, orange. And I came back and I said, hey, it's going to be orange next year. That will be the fashion color. And it was. So these things, made us think, right? How can we change it? And we were really, what could we do? And then one day, a sales guy came by with his big suitcase and showing this one and this T-shirt, and with this embroidery, and with ding-dong, and then the last shirt he had was an organic T-shirt. I said, what is organic? He said, wow, organic, that's amazing. That's what you gotta do. And I said, for me, it was just cotton. I really didn't know that much about cotton. That was just cotton you used for a T-shirt, a polo. And he said, hey, one T-shirt pollutes 3,000 liters of water. And I said, what? Yeah, and 85% of that is from the cotton field. You go to a cotton field, go with me to a cotton field, and you'll see that it's dead earth. After a conventional cotton field, after 3 weeks, they've used so many chemicals, insecticides and pesticides, there's no microorganisms, there's no living species, it's dead earth. I said, pooh. And that tricked us, So we said, how can we make a product for our market on the B2B business? This is 16 years ago. That is reliable for me, for the producer, and for the consumer. And the only way we could do that was to go through the whole production chain in regards to how we produce and how the people are treated in the production process. And then we ended up by doing that. And for you to believe us, we had to go for certificates, because that's so simple. Certificates is cool because you have an authority who makes the rules, and then you have an independent party who checks and regulates and makes sure that you follow the standards. So we ended up with organic cotton, GOTS, Global Organic Standard, and when you do organic cotton, I'll stay for that for just, this is so important because you cannot use chemicals. And today, you know, it's so important for the biodiversity that you don't mess it all up. They make intercropping, so then they grow food, then they grow cotton, and when you use too many chemicals, even the food gets polluted. The only thing which is sure in India, where we produce now, is that the farmers get cancer slowly but surely. This is crazy, you know. So we were sure we got to do it, you know. And just to round up the cotton story, could be that the farmers are buying seeds every year, gene-modified seeds, which cannot reproduce itself. So they're brought in hybrid seeds instead of using the seeds which has been growing on the field last year and which is adapted to the environment, the fungus and the animals. So this is a crazy story. And today in India, the farmers are using 40% of their selling price to pay for chemicals and seeds in the conventional. So we got to change everything to organic. So all our products are GOTS certified. Then you have the farmer. We got to help these. They are the lowest in the hierarchy, and as we can agree, all of us, we gotta make them. We gotta make them stay to grow. We gotta make them take care of environment. We don't need them in Delhi. There's already 20 million people who have nothing to do. So we also believe in fair trade. So we give them a premium on top of every kilo we buy. Then you have the people involved in the production system. There we use SA8000. You have some dynamic models, BSCI, ZX, blah, blah. And then when you are totally on top, you can get SA8000 certified. In the production, which is also a very big problem, we have to clean the wastewater. We have to use the less harmful chemicals. We use organic oils for softening instead of chemical softeners. And we clean the wastewater. So there we are EU Flour certified, and actually we are EU Flour ambassador. This is how we do. And we invented this 15 years ago, and we thought, wow, here we go, right? So here we filled up the stock with hundreds of thousands of T-shirts and hoodies and sweatshirts. And we said, hey, we're here. We're a little more expensive, we know, but you can buy it now. And it doesn't pollute. And it helps the poor farmer. And people were looking at me saying, Lars, that's great. What is it, organic? Do you think I have to eat it, Lars? No, don't eat the shirt, please don't. But what does it matter to me? Come back when the price is the same as the cheap ones. Please, then I'll buy from you. I said, oof. So actually, it was very, very difficult. People's opinion 15, 13 years ago was, what does it matter to me if you pollute in Asia? They didn't understand that if you make a poo in India, you can smell it up here. They just didn't get it. But this has changed past 8 years, I would say. And today, we are growing very, very fast. We are the sustainable brand on the B2B business area. And it's getting a little more fun now because we can sell our goods, and the big corporates are joining up and want to use our platform to show to their employees or their if they give it away as a gift, to show them, hey, this product, this T-shirt, this hoodie, this sweatshirt, this bag, this cap, it's made sustainable.
Lars, we're running out of time, but I have one question for you. I'd love it if you could just take 1 minute to talk about tiger cotton. And the reason why I'd like you to talk about tiger cotton is because this is more about environmental sustainability. This is about social sustainability as well.
That's correct. So we have joined in, the main thing is to make cotton sustainable, so to go away from conventional cotton. Today it's only 0.6% which is organic. The rest is conventional. It's crazy. So how can we change? So we went into a project together with WWF India and Lars Foundation in Madhya Pradesh, between the old forest in India. There's 14,000 farmers, and they are now changing to become organic. We have 4,000 farmers in the project, and neutral, that you can. We are buying all the cotton they produce and have made tiger cotton, so that we sell to, you know, we have a special tiger cotton club. But the whole idea is that we want to make the whole area sustainable, so the tigers can go from like a tiger corridor.
So it's promoting biodiversity, it's improving the conditions for the farmers.
Yes.
And at the same time, even though tiger cotton might not be organic, what you're doing by buying tiger cotton is to fund the progress of companies towards an organic and self-sufficient environment. So I think
that's correct. And to help the farmer, what we do is we pay them a premium, just as we do with fair trade.
So what I'll do now is I'll take a break here and step back, and we have 13 and a half minutes left to take some questions. And Hampus, you're here digitally, so just to line it up also, I'll ask some questions, and then we'll just shoot out with answers, and we'll see. It's a bit of an experiment, because I really would like to find out how we can take this and turn it into what I mentioned earlier, which is these issues that we're talking about are so large scale, and so such a planetary scale that it's hard for us as individuals to actually relate to them. And I talk about this because I feel like a hypocrite every single day. I mean, I'm wearing, you know, leather, which is extremely unsustainable. I'm wearing, okay, my t-shirt's from Son of a Tailor, so that's actually sustainable and made to measure. Sorry, Lars, it's not neutral.
Right.
No, it's not neutral.
Oh my God.
But my question for Hampus to start with is, when you're dealing with people as individuals and when you're engaging with people, do you find in any way that sometimes it's difficult, because the people here spend so much of our lives focusing on this that it's almost a cognitive bias that we take it for granted that people understand the issues here and how it affects their daily day. Do you ever have any discussions with people where you just meet them and you find out that you want to have a way of convincing them without appearing like you're preaching to them?
Yeah, that's a complicated question, right? I think that, I mean, we went out and raised a fund, and if you raise a fund of a, you know, double-digit million euro fund, you have to kind of kiss a lot of frogs. So a lot of people we talk to, and I would say that some people were discussing if climate change is real, if it's made by humans, if we can do anything about it, if all these solutions weren't going to be burning money in different ways only. So I think that we've met quite a lot of people and had these conversations. So I would say that's a natural thing. I think for me, at least, I think this is much be a very individual approach, but I kind of feel, I have a sort of high faith in that nobody's being evil. And I feel like I really try to separate the person from what they're doing. And of course, a lot of people I meet and talk to, I sort of explain to them that you can vote with your money, you can buy natural cotton, you can eat better food, you can eat greens, vegetables, you can do so many of these good things. So you can vote quite a lot with your money. And then secondly, you can actually vote with your feet. You can go out and protest on Fridays for Future. You can really show that you care and actually change the politicians. You naturally can vote with your votes. I mean, you can vote for a party that sort of wants to change the policies and politics. But the thing is, what you also can do is you can actually vote with your job. So if you work for a company that you're thinking is actually not doing something interesting for the world, you can quit your job and go to a job or start a company. And so I think that I don't judge people who haven't gone vegan or don't fly at all or whatever. I just try to kind of nudge people in the right direction in a very kind of nice way and sort of explaining to them that we think that you can do so many things. And I would say that people that seem to be suffering the most ethically and having the most qualms are actually the people that are, let's say, vegetarian, fly twice a year, have children, and have like a regular non-EV car, and they're thinking they're not doing enough. So they're in panic mode because they're not vegan. They're still flying those 2 flights. They have kids. And I think that's really tricky because those people have already reduced their footprint quite a lot. So I think the best thing you can do is not go completely all the way down, but actually to get one of your friends to not eat meat on Mondays and Tuesdays, to get one of your friends to stop booking weddings on the Maldives, and so on and so forth. So I think that I'm one of those people who think that let's not make the people that are already good suffer more. Let's try to get people to kind of nudge themselves into the good realm.
This is really interesting also. There's a joke that some people in the plant-based community say, which is, how can you tell there's a vegan in the room? And the answer is, because they tell you. And just to put it out there, for the past 5 years, my wife and I have been eating 100% plant-based. Our children are mostly plant-based also. And what's been very inspiring as being part of the strategy work in Green Future Fund is learning about a lot of the data behind this as well. And aside from reducing waste, the single other thing that can make a massive impact on climate, it's the direct and indirect effects of moving people towards a plant-based diet. And then when you look at the numbers, it's kind of daunting because we need to actually reduce our meat consumption by about 90% and our dairy consumption by 60% on average across the planet in order to hit our climate goals. So it's a very big issue. The thing is that it's such a huge number and such a huge issue, and we've all grown up ourselves eating this way, that when you talk with other people, they say, yeah, I get it, but then it's very difficult to make change. And I think I agree with 100% also that the best way to make a change is one step at a time. We didn't go vegan overnight. We started one step at a time, and we reduced and learned as the process went.
And I think, can I add, that's exactly what we want to do as well. So like on the side of the box even, we tell, like depending on the size of the box, how much land did this save, how much water did this save, and how much produce are you saving? And like you said, like it's about, because it's so daunting to think about, oh, the problem is so huge, it doesn't matter what I do, but actually our task at EatCrim, like what we are dedicating ourselves on, is telling the small stories. You know, 1 week there was 17,000 broccoli that were a little bit damaged and nobody ate them, you know, like trying to make it more understandable. And yeah, when you get every single box, you know, we're not talking about big numbers in terms of one particular box necessarily, but when you get it every week, and every week you get this message on your face saying that I'm actually doing my bit, you know, we with our marketing efforts, our social media, our whatever channels we're using, on shouting that, then you as a consumer also get this positive feeling of, oh, actually it does matter. So it's also companies have to encourage and inspire rather than maybe just give the daunting message sometimes.
So for whatever it's worth, we opened our Grim box yesterday and made made ugly root vegetables for dinner last night, among other things.
Great. So, it works.
If I may. Yeah, I just maybe more a comment than a question, because I think there's one observation on what we can do as consumers and human beings. I was just inspired what you said, Petra, earlier in your presentation about also in the role of an entrepreneur. Because now we're in Denmark, there's a little bit of Hans Christian Andersen and the Emperor's New Clothes in this. Because just like you stumbled across waste possibilities by visiting a farm, I mean, personally, I have not worked my entire life with these kind of themes. It's mission-driven, but I think that's just one observation. I think it goes over and over again by talking to other companies here, that it's not necessary. We can't wait for the S&P 500s of this world to solve these kind of problems. But the good news is that and I think you can say all of us here are examples of that actually in the role of an entrepreneur, there's both, you can say, there's actually ample opportunity. There's so many solutions that needs entrepreneurs to start harvesting. One. Two is that you don't need S&P 500 capital in order to do it. You can actually be a quite small company and actually do a huge footprint, even though the challenges are humongous. It's actually not just some of the small parts. You can actually contribute, which I personally find extremely meaningful, contribute quite a lot. And then I think the last point I just want to make is, and I think your company is a good example, I think Lars is probably a good example, is that the readiness, this regarding whether it's consumers, whether it's companies buying T-shirts, whether it's farmers that needs to transition, the readiness, if we set it up for is enormous, and therefore it scales.
One of the things that I think is so important as well is that no one wants to be preached at. Yeah. Nobody wants to be told that they're doing something that they shouldn't do. And it's really important that all of us acknowledge that none of us is a saint. I'm driving a non-EV vehicle right now, Hampus. Not for long, I hope, but I am. And I mean, every day that we do things, that we travel, it's funny because feeling guilt at the same time of at least making a difference. And I think that the things that we do, not everyone needs to be vegan. And as you say, just reducing and exploring is a great thing. But sustainable production, sustainable agriculture, sustainable use of waste, these are all things that we can do as individuals and as companies in order to inspire others, to inspire our colleagues, to inspire our friends, to inspire our children so that we can set a good example for them. And also, as part of this, though, it would be really great to find a way, and I don't have the answer, but how can we help them understand and educate them in a way that makes them understand why this is so damn important? Because this is actually an existential thing that we're talking about here. This is an issue that will not go away. It will only get bigger. So how can we do this in a way that does not come across as preachy, but that helps them understand why this is so important? Petra, do you have any?
Talking about the future generations, or the generations after us, is actually very powerful.
Yeah.
Because then I think it's also, we can see a big difference in that, we have sort of the younger target markets who are, it's more about, I'm actually making this because I know this has to be done. It's so ingrained in the, you've heard it in school, you heard it throughout when you were growing up. But then we have the older families where you feel that, crap, I actually haven't done enough for my future, for my children and for my grandchildren. So we can really see that that's actually also important to talk about that, like what is the effect that you leave on the world as well.
On this note, Lars, I think one of the most inspiring things, I've used the word inspiring many times here and I'm not done yet, but one of the most inspiring things about Neutral as a company is that you are multi-generational. You are a family. You have both of your children who are involved in the business. Can you talk about that process and how it's been to be working with them and how you feel about that?
Well, it's great in many ways. We are in Copenhagen. We are 12 people, so we are 4. At work, we are not a family, so we each have our area. Frederik, IT. I'm at sales and production and. HR for Patricia, my daughter, and my wife is taking economy, it's working, and the good thing is that we can take decisions right away. This is really cool. We don't have to wait. We don't have to make a lot of reports. If it's a good idea, we talk about it and go, right? So this has been a success for us, and I think what you said about how can we really make this change? How can we let people be involved? How can we tell them how serious this is? I think there's a big movement between the young people. I mean, vegan, they see how horrifying the future looks when they put on their glasses. I really think that's a big helper for sustainability, and we need crazy people like us to believe in a thing and keep on tracking it, even though it's so easy to give up. Just keep on tracking, right? We were doing that for 8 years, and then it started to turn. Actually, we won Sustainia 8 years ago, and that was a big turning point.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
We have less than 2 minutes left now before we hit the 45-minute note. I'm going to leave it open for any discussions or any further comments. Hampus, do you have any last thoughts here?
I think one thing for me, or a quick thing, is I think that one thing we see as a climate fund is we see companies in almost every single sector you can imagine and almost every single technology. It tends to be that most people who think about climate, they think they have to be a process engineer or chemist or energy, working with an energy sector or within agriculture. I think we see companies in so many different sectors. Like, I mean, pure software companies that work with like hardware and sensor, companies within the consumer lines of fashion, as we talked about, companies that work in the production line of fashion, companies that only work with the software for supply chain management, companies that work with like the end products of creating products, food products, companies that work with the shipping of them, supply chain, measurement. And it's like you have that across every single sector, anything from transportation, energy, agriculture, land use, plastics. There's everything. I mean, I think we've met since 1st of June, I think we've met 800 companies in Europe that have been really, really impressive. And so far we've only invested in 8, but we've been really, really impressed how many amazing climate tech companies that are out there and are looking to build huge companies and do huge impact. So there's no lack of ideas, and you don't have to be a chemist or a plastic expert or a farmer.
You know, I actually think that this is a great way of ending this conversation. So thank you very much, all of you, for joining us. For me, this has been extremely interesting. I love being surrounded by people who have your values and your drive and your ambition and who are not afraid to lean in and lean out in order to get things done and set an example. So thank you so much for joining. And it's exactly 45 minutes.
Thanks.